Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm really happy to be here with Amy Comeau. Amy, welcome to the show here. Thanks for chatting with me today.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Jared. I'm so happy about it.
I love one of the goals of this show is to just help people feel more connected. And you, to me, are a great example of staying connected in this industry. And I'd love to maybe give you a moment or two to share whatever you'd like to about your background, about who you are and what you do, and just remind people a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I always joke that I have an unusual background. So I spent my career always in marketing and communications. That's been my main industry. But I started out working for opera companies and in the performing arts. And that's what brought me to Atlanta almost 30 years ago. I pivoted, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and then over to Emory University and Emory Healthcare, where I spent 20 years in higher education and healthcare, where my time leading Emory Healthcare's marketing team was bookended between two global infectious diseases. Started with Ebola and ended with the pandemic. And I was fortunate enough to be able to publish a book about my experience leading my team through the pandemic called Every Storm Runs Out of Rain. And now I'm out on my own as an independent consultant. I'm consulting with nonprofits and performing arts organizations, healthcare organizations, even small business owners as they need help developing their marketing strategy. So I'm a little bit of a Jane of all trades these days, and I'm enjoying it.
Maybe a good place for us to start today is just thinking back to your early career and thinking back to some of those key moments that influenced your path. What were some of those key moments that kind of influenced your direction?
Yeah, it's interesting. And as I look back on it, there's probably two things that I would say is timing and the courage to be different. And I wouldn't have said that, I think maybe even 10 years ago. But when I look back, I started out at Northwestern as a voice major. My plan was always to sing. And I realized even early on in my time at Northwestern that I was like, this is going to be impossible. So I chose a path to get a bachelor's of arts and music, and no one else was doing that. There were maybe 4 or 5 of us that graduated with that. Everybody else was gonna be music education or performance majors, and that led me to a opportunity to take classes out at Kellogg and Medill and just really broaden my, horizons around what it would be to have a career in arts administration. And so as I think about that, every pivot in my career has been a moment of realizing the original path I had set out for me isn't really working anymore, even though it's the one that everybody else thinks I should take, or it's different than what other people are doing. And so I decided, I think my advice to myself and to others is that it's okay to be different. And sometimes it's taking that moment to think about different inflection points in your career and that timing, that moment when something happens, and having the courage to follow that. I mean, not just willy-nilly, right? But have follow it with conviction and education and do all those things because you never know where it's going to lead. And ultimately led me to Atlanta, and it led me to leading Emory Healthcare's marketing team through a once in a lifetime pandemic, which I never would have thought when I was a 20-year-old changing my degree from performance to arts administration.
What about younger marketers in particular? What advice do you find yourselves giving to someone who's a little younger in their marketing career?
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody who's early in his career, probably maybe 6 months ago, because he had actually read my book and he was interested in how he was gonna build his how he could build a career in as a healthcare marketer, and I said, I think it's really important to be resourceful, right? So be willing to look at, try and find things on your own and learn a lot on your own. But we also had a conversation around how I think, as a Gen Xer, I think I'm at least the last of the generation that has been analog and digital, right? And now the younger generations are all digital. So everything comes to them easy and fast. And so I said, before you start a newsletter or recommend to your boss or your company that you need to have a TikTok channel, think about, well, why? Like, what's your goal? Like, strategy and who you're targeting is so important. It's not just because it's easy to do and it's a fun toy, but really think about who your audiences are, what your product is, and how you need to position that to your audience. Because if your audience isn't on TikTok, I don't care how big of a tool that is, you're wasting your time being there when you might need to be on Substack or LinkedIn or somewhere else. And so I think for younger marketers, it is about really thinking and spending time on that strategy that only a human can do.
Like, what are some of those common mistakes that they might see more often with a younger marketer? Because part of this has to do with them just being able to build confidence, to recognize they need to have a stronger voice at the table. Is that something you see a lot of Like that could be a struggle.
I'm gonna say this and it's gonna sound contradictory, but I think with younger marketers, they either have too much confidence or not enough confidence. And so I think it is about, if you come into the room and you know all the answers and you're, in your late 20s or even early 30s, you're gonna have great ideas, right? But you may not have all the answers. So if you come in too hot and too strong, like you're a know-it-all, that's gonna discredit you, right? But if you come in and you're a wallflower and you're meek and you're not actually asking questions, saying what you don't know, trying to understand, that also is going to come across as you're not a go-getter. So it is a difficult balance, I think, of trying to figure out how do you have humble confidence, right? So you're going in, you're intentional about learning from the people around you, whether it's operations or your boss or others who've been at this a lot longer, to understand what their backgrounds are, what their drivers are, what are their problems that they're trying to solve before you start to give your ideas for solutions. And so I think that's a delicate balance. And I think marketing, I mean, I learned it myself. I went in too hot sometimes, especially as someone who grew up north and came down to the south. I realized pretty quickly, like, gotta go, gotta be, and being really direct was not part of the culture down here. I had to learn how to ask people about their gardens and things like that. And so I learned how to navigate different rooms because of that experience. And then, but there have been times when I've had people say, why aren't you speaking up more in XYZ room or classroom or whatever? And so I think it is just trying to manage your confidence and knowing when to act like you know what you're doing, even if you don't. And then also being humble.
I know the common way to think about it is, hey, if you could speak with the younger version of yourself, what advice would you offer them? I don't know, like if you're talking with younger Amy here,
Yeah.
your first few years of your career, what do you think you would have told her?
I would have told myself it's okay to be different. Like, don't be afraid of being different, and you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. Like, just what I had people colleagues of mine, and I shouldn't say colleagues, classmates of mine, who were going like the P&G route and the, super, sort of marketing business world. And I thought, man, should I have done that with my career? Should I be doing that? Because I felt like here I am, a music major, and I'm setting myself out for a life in nonprofit arts, and I'm never gonna, make my millions of dollars. But it's okay because I have had a rich and fulfilling career because of that. And so for me, I would say it's okay to be different. The other thing I would tell myself, because I'm talking about humble confidence, like I've got it all figured out. There are times when you're gonna fail and the rug is gonna get pulled out from underneath you. And so I lost my job at the Atlanta Opera in 2002 after September 11th really decimated the arts community here in Atlanta. And I thought losing my job at the time was my fault. Now I have, decades past to look back and say, no, it was the economy. It was a lot of other things that were happening that caused the company to be unstable. And so those moments that feel like failure are often moments that are going to open up doors to things you never thought were possible. So I've heard this phrase, I'm sure a lot of us heard it. I heard it from Matt Ryan, who is the former quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, but it's called there are no losses. It's either you win or you learn. And so it's like failure is actually an opportunity to learn. It's not, and sometimes you grow more from your failures and the losses than you do from your wins.
Like you mentioned, kind of having the rug pulled out from under you too. I mean, those are moments of inflection. Those are moments of being able to stop and reflect and assess things. Are there some specifics in the book? Because I love what I've been able to read from it about some of the specifics. It's dealing mostly with a specific time frame around the pandemic and just things that are learned. But I'd love to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, well, so I mean, for people who aren't familiar with the book or haven't read it, it's started out as a series of Friday emails that I wrote to my team just to get us through those first 8 weeks of shelter in place and remote work. And it became a daily habit I did until my very last day at Emory. And so the book is a 3-year compilation of those. And so if you're like a pandemic or a history freak, you'll be able to see it's basically a week by week account of the pandemic through a healthcare marketer's eyes, but it's really so much more than that. It's a leadership book about leading oneself and one's team through crisis, challenge, or change. And I think one of the passages I wrote, and this was probably, a couple of years after the pandemic started. So we're all trying to start to get back to normal and trying to, well, normal, and we're trying to figure out how to get back into marketing and all of the, a strategic plan. We were no longer in reactive mode and we had to get back into proactive mode. And I told my team a story about my childhood, and one where I learned some of my very first lessons about marketing. And I didn't realize it was marketing at the time, but I like to do yard sales to try and make money for ice cream and stuff like that. And so I did a yard sale. I got a little card table of my parents. I put it out in our front yard. So it was very small, like postage stamp in this big yard. And I had like doll furniture and Barbie clothes and all these things that I was trying to sell. And we lived, our street was like a corner. So there was a main thoroughfare on here on this way and a main thoroughfare this way. So I went down and I put signs up that said yard sale, doll furniture, doll clothes, these different things. And nobody came by. And I think I probably scribbled it in crayon or something. And I may have gotten a few people that were in the neighborhood and came by and did stuff. I'm like, well, that stinks. And so the next time I did this, I changed my marketing and I got a much bigger piece of a poster board and I used like the big bubble letters, right? Like everybody knows what the bubble letters are. And I colored them really dark and I just said yard sale in giant, letters. And then I just wrote clothes, furniture, I don't know, something else. And I had cars streaming by because I thought it was like a legit yard sale. And so some people are like, oh my God, like I just got duped by a 12-year-old. And they just drove right on by. But other people were so impressed by my ingenuity. I ended up like selling out all of my inventory. And so it's just a reminder of simplicity in marketing, boldness, right? I mean, I'm not a big fan of billboards, but if you're going to do a billboard, you better be able to read it when you're driving by, and it better be just a few words that are going to capture somebody's attention. And I learned that when I was like 10 or 11. And so I share that with my team as an example of we're always trying to learn. And sometimes you just got to get back to the basics when it comes to marketing.
How much time do we spend kind of spinning in circles, wordsmithing and coming up with the right things? And you're like, yeah, let's just be direct. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
I love that. What are you personally spending time looking at, trying to keep up with? Kind of like what trends or issues are in the middle of your radar screen these days?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So for me personally, as I'm trying to like I'm in this consulting, a sort of independent contractor mode as I'm exploring what's next for this third phase of my career. And it may be that I end up having what I've been calling a charcuterie career, a portfolio career, but I'm still trying to figure out which cheeses and salamis I like on my board. But so I'm looking at how can I piece together personally the performing arts and the higher education and healthcare in what I do next. I'm thinking a lot now about the role of the human in 2026 and the role of humanity in 2026 and beyond. Because we've gotten so digital, we've gotten so fragmented in how we consume things. It's very easy for people to spend their days in their homes or their dorm rooms or whatever. And I think now more than ever, people are craving human interaction. And so, what does that look like as a opportunity for, professional development or, career options? Then also, what does that look like in the workplace? So remote is fantastic. And listen, I'm a hybrid fan. I don't think that you need to be 100% on site, but there are moments when the collaboration only works when you're in a room with people and you're not distracted. Um, and then the human, we referenced AI a little bit. Like I love AI, but I can't reason like a human can. So that's what I'm talking about. The human and humanity, I think, are two things that I'm thinking a lot about now. And what does that look like in marketing? What does that look like for me personally and professionally, and for us as a society?
You mentioned AI. I mean, just real briefly, are there things you're doing to just kind of keep up with like AI tools or just learning about it itself? I'm always curious just how people spend time just trying to learn more there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the benefits of now not working in a 24/7 high pressure healthcare job is I've got the time to explore. So over the summer, a fellow author of mine in his personal business did a summer project that he was called Project, I think it was 900, where he was trying to um, for free teach 900 nonprofits about AI. So I engaged, I took that. I only made it through, about halfway through the program, but I learned so much about prompting. I learned about Claude, which is private if you choose not to share your information. I learned about Notebook LM. So I started to learn a lot more about AI. And since I didn't have the pressure of being part of a massive healthcare organization that was worried about IP and HIPAA and all those things, I could figure out how to play around with it myself. And so there are some tools that I've used. I haven't figured out how to do agents yet, some of those things, but I just keep trying to refine my prompting and how I use different tools and when. Like I've figured out how to bake the perfect potato using Gemini. I mean, I've been baking potatoes for forever. And who knew that when you pull the potato out of the oven that you should slice it right away and fluff it right away so that stops it from getting gummy. Usually you just pull them out and you just let them sit and they keep steaming and that's how they get gummy. So, I mean, it's AI is your friend, but it can't replace a human.
Uh, Amy, what else have we mentioned? Like, what other insights, if you had kind of final word here, would you share with colleagues in healthcare marketing? Anything we haven't mentioned yet? Any direction we haven't gone yet?
I mean, I'll share what I used to share with my team all the time is that I think marketing and healthcare are the two most challenging industries to be in because they're constantly changing. And they're both service oriented in a way. So marketing, when I started out, there weren't any websites. There was no social media. Like there were all those things. And now it's super fragmented. And so we're constantly having to learn and things are constantly changing. And that same is the nature of healthcare because of just, especially if you're in an academic medical center, your core is for continuous improvement and discovery to make we'll use the word humanity better, right? And so those are always going to be, you're always going to be balancing those challenges of both industries as long as you're a healthcare marketer in healthcare. The other thing that I think is important for healthcare marketers is that there's always going to be chaos in healthcare, and we're seeing it more and more now, right? I think we joked like it was 2020 and then it was 2021 and it was 2022, hold my beer. I mean, it's just like every year, every January is another, like, really, can it get any crazier in the healthcare world? And so I think it is taking that and knowing there's always going to be disruption in healthcare. And how do you focus on, I think, controlling what you can control, right? There are things that are important and there are things that you can control. And when things feel like they're in chaos, you can't change things that you don't control. So focus on the things that you can control that matter, and that will be your North Star as you continue to move forward. Because it's easy to get distracted in all of the woe is me and the what ifs and said, no, you know what? Let's just focus on what we can accomplish and let's keep moving that needle forward.
Great way to round out this conversation, Amy. Thanks for diving in with us a little bit and giving us some insights into what got you to where you are today, but also just some of the exciting things that you have the opportunity to work with right now. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much.